The final function of dot notation is to access data type specific methods. Remember all those secret methods I was talking about earlier? Those are all accessed using dot notation. Now there are two types of methods you access using dot notation. The first is called an instance method. Like many things in code, it has a fancy name. Instance methods have prerequisites. You must have an instance of a data type before you can use the method. In a nutshell, you have a variable that stores a value. Your variable is your instance of something. So once you have your variable, you can call an instance method against it. The second type is called a global method. With global methods, you don't have any prerequisites. You can jump right in and use them anytime you want, anywhere. You literally just type the name of a data type, like string, then dot, then all of a sudden you have access to all global methods of a string. So to summarize, one starts with an instance of a data type and the other starts with the literal name of a data type. Let me give you a few examples to solidify this for you. On the left-hand side, I'm going to show you examples of instance methods. And on the right-hand side, I'm going to show you global methods. The first few examples are instance methods of the string data type. Notice all of these begin with our myString variable. That's our instance. Next, there's a dot. And finally, we call the secret methods of the string data type. Capitalize will take our myString variable and capitalize all of its letters. Length will count the number of characters in our variable. And contains will tell us if our string contains @gmail.com, returning us a true or false value. Notice that some instance methods accept inputs inside their parentheses and some don't. When we refer to instances, we're not talking about this value inside the parentheses. We're talking about the myString instance of a string data type. Now, here are some instance methods for a date variable. Again, myDate is the instance of a date data type. addDays5 will add 5 days to our date. IsLeapYear will tell us true or false if our date is in a leap year. And year will return to us just the year our date is in. Finally, here are some instance methods for lists. Remember, lists are collections of values in Salesforce, and lists are considered data types too. So if we have an instance of a list, in this case, the variable myList, then we can call list instance methods such as add, which adds a value to our list, clear, which removes all values from our list, and isEmpty, which tells us true or false if our list has any values inside it. Now on to global methods. Remember, the difference here is we don't need an instance of anything. Let's look at a date global method. We just type the data type named date, then a dot, and now we're free to use any of its global methods. In all these scenarios, we don't have an instance of a date ready to use beforehand. We just use the literal name of its data type to get access to its methods. Date.today gives us today's date, and date.newInstance creates a January 31st, 2020 date for us. Notice that both global methods and instance methods can accept inputs in their methods too. DateTime also has a useful global method called now, which gives us the current date and time. Again, we use the literal name of the data type, not a variable of it. Global methods are meant to make our lives easier, so Salesforce gives us access to some special global methods too. For example, there are global methods on a user info type that lets us get information from the current logged in user, in this case, the user's ID and profile ID. Salesforce also gives us access to global methods on a math type, one of which lets us create a random number and the other gives us the value of pi. Very cool and very convenient. At this point, you may be wondering, there seem to be so many methods out there. How do I know what's available? Don't worry, you don't need to memorize anything. Chances are, if you can think of a method that you'd want to use, it already exists. It's kind of like using formulas in Salesforce. You don't know all of them off the top of your head, but if you can think of one that would be helpful, you just search for it. To be completely honest, you really just Google things. Wondering what methods are available for string data types? Google Salesforce string methods, and the first link is the one you want. The same applies for any other data type in Salesforce. Heck, I've been doing this for years, and I still Google these things on a near daily basis. Don't worry, you'll get a better feel for what's available out there as you become more experienced. Just to make sure you know exactly what page to look out for, I'll show you how it's done. Go to Google, type Salesforce date methods. Click the first link, and now you see a complete list of methods available. Click on a method, and it'll tell you what it does and give you an example of how to use it. This one is an instance method. You can tell because it requires a variable first. This one is a global method. You can tell because you start with the data type name. See? Not too bad. Okay, now I want to teach you something special. The output of most code statements is an instance of a data type. Got that? Here's an example. Let's say I'm creating a new date variable called mom's birthday. I use dot notation and a global date method to create a specific date from scratch. By the way, this date here is not my mom's real birthday, but if you send me gifts, I'll take them anyways. Next, I'm going to run a few code statements to illustrate that the result of the code statement is an instance of a data type. First, I'm adding 10 years to my mom's birthday using dot notation and the add years instance method. The output of this is an instance of a date data type. Next, I'm using the isLeapYear instance method on my mom's birthday. The result of this is an instance of a Boolean. Even though we started with a date, the isLeapYear changed the result to a Boolean, true or false, whether or not my mom's birthday is on a leap year. Now I'm going to use the format method. This formats my date into a nice readable instance of a string. Then I use the day of year method. The output is an instance of an integer telling me how many days into the year my date is. I did all of this to show you that the output of these is simply an instance of a data type, not necessarily the same one you began with, but an instance of a data type nonetheless. Nothing I did was actually saved, however. I just ran the method, it gave an output, but we didn't do anything with the output, so it's as if nothing happened at all. If we did want to preserve the output, we'd store it in a new variable like this. Now, before I move on, I just want to say the years do pass by quickly, so if you can, tell your mom today that you love her. All right, next example. Now we're going to chain dot notation together. Since the output of code statements is just an instance of a data type, we can use instance methods on the output, meaning we can chain instance methods together. First, we start with a datetime instance that's created using the dateTimeNow global method. Next, we use the addHours instance method on our variable. The result of this entire line is still an instance of a datetime. Then, we use the date instance method. This method translates our datetime to a date. Now this entire line computes to a date instead of a datetime. And so, we can now only use date instance methods, in this case, addDays. This results in a date again, so we chain another date instance method after this. We'll chain the year method, which returns to us an instance of an integer, for example, 2017. We now can only use integer methods. Finally, we'll chain together the format method, which translates our integer into a string. The final output of this massive line of code is just an instance of a string. Woof.